What if I told you that long before the Incas ruled the Andes, there existed a civilization so advanced that their creations would leave any archaeologist absolutely stunned? Welcome to the story of the Chorrera civilization, a hidden treasure of Ecuadorian prehistory that will change everything you thought you knew about ancient peoples. In the heart of what is now Ecuador, between 1,500 and 500 years before Christ, an extraordinary society was about to revolutionize the art of pottery and architectural engineering. These weren't simple villagers struggling to survive. The Chorrera people developed techniques so sophisticated that historians are still trying to understand how they achieved such mastery with the limited resources available to them. Their pottery wasn't just functional, it was art that told stories, captured emotions, and connected them to their gods. Imagine walking through a Chorrera settlement 3,000 years ago. You'd witness master craftsmen creating vessels so thin you could almost see through them, while others designed elaborate buildings that somehow withstood earthquakes in one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. What's truly fascinating is how little recognition they've received in our history books. While the Incas and Aztecs dominate our understanding of pre-Columbian America, the Chorrera quietly influenced generations of cultures that followed them, laying the groundwork for artistic and technological innovations that would eventually define Andean civilization. If you love history and want to unravel the mysteries of the great empires that time has forgotten, like this video, subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel and don't miss a single episode. Join us as we journey back in time to discover the remarkable legacy of the Chorrera, a civilization that proves humanity's genius has always been with us, waiting to be rediscovered. Nestled along the lush coastal region of modern-day Ecuador, the Chorrera civilization emerged in a landscape that was nothing short of paradise. Picture this: rich, fertile valleys fed by rivers flowing from the Andes, dense tropical forests teeming with life, and the vast Pacific Ocean providing abundant resources. This wasn't just a fortunate coincidence. It was the perfect cradle for one of history's most overlooked civilizations. Around 3,000 years ago, while the Egyptian pharaohs were building their pyramids across the ocean, the Chorrera people were establishing something remarkable on Ecuador's coast. Their strategic location gave them access to diverse ecosystems, mountains, valleys, and sea, creating a natural crossroads for trade, ideas, and cultural exchange. What makes the Chorrera truly fascinating is how they transformed this geographical advantage into a thriving society. Archaeological evidence shows they weren't just surviving, they were innovating at a pace that would be impressive even by today's standards. They developed sophisticated farming techniques that allowed them to cultivate maize, beans, and squash with remarkable efficiency. Their understanding of seasonal patterns and irrigation helped them create agricultural surpluses that supported growing communities. One of history's best-kept secrets is how advanced their social organization became. Unlike many contemporary societies built around simple chiefdoms, the Chorrera developed complex social hierarchies with specialized roles. Imagine a society where craftspeople, farmers, builders, and spiritual leaders all worked in harmony, each contributing their unique skills to the greater community. Their earliest settlements reveal something extraordinary: carefully planned communities with distinct areas for living, working, and worship. They built homes designed to withstand the humid coastal climate, using local materials with ingenious architectural solutions. Some settlements even show evidence of community gathering spaces, suggesting they valued social cohesion and shared decision-making. Perhaps most remarkable is that they accomplished all this without writing or metal tools as we understand them. They passed knowledge through oral tradition and apprenticeship, creating a society that valued wisdom and skill above all else. The Chorrera weren't isolated either. Their distinctive artifacts have been found hundreds of miles from their heartland, evidence of extensive trade networks stretching across ancient Ecuador. These weren't simple exchanges, but complex relationships that spread ideas and innovations throughout the region, making the Chorrera influential far beyond their territorial boundaries. As you walk through Ecuador's National Museum today, you can still feel the echoes of this extraordinary civilization, one that laid the groundwork for all the Andean cultures that would follow. The Chorrera weren't just inhabitants of a place and time. They were visionaries who transformed their world through creativity, cooperation, and an intimate understanding of their environment. If there's one thing that truly sets the Chorrera civilization apart, it's their mastery of ceramics, an art form they elevated to heights that would make even modern potters marvel. When archaeologists first unearthed these pieces in the early 20th century, many couldn't believe they were looking at works created nearly 3,000 years ago. These weren't just ordinary clay pots. The Chorrera artisans developed revolutionary techniques that were centuries ahead of their time. They discovered ways to create clay so fine and malleable that they could fashion vessels with walls thinner than an eggshell, yet remarkably durable. Just imagine the level of skill and patience required to work with such delicate material without modern tools. Here's something that will absolutely blow your mind. These ancient Ecuadorian artists created ceramics so refined they could depict everyday scenes with microscopic details so small you'd need a magnifying glass to fully appreciate them. We're talking about tiny facial expressions on figurines smaller than your thumb, intricate patterns that repeat with perfect precision, and naturalistic animal representations that capture the very essence of the creature. This level of craftsmanship wasn't just unusual for the time, it was thought to be impossible. One of their most ingenious creations was the famous whistling bottles, ceramic vessels designed to produce sounds when liquid was poured in or out. These weren't just containers. They were musical instruments, toys, and storytelling devices all in one. Some whistling bottles were shaped like birds that would sing their real-life songs when used, while others mimicked monkey calls or other animal sounds. Think about that. They created interactive art that engaged multiple senses thousands of years before the concept of interactive media even existed. The Chorrera didn't create these masterpieces simply for decoration. Each ceramic piece held deep cultural and ritual significance, serving as a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. Anthropologists believe many vessels were used in sacred ceremonies, perhaps containing special brews made from local plants to facilitate communication with ancestral spirits or deities. Others represented important myths or origin stories, preserving their cultural identity through visual storytelling. The symbols and motifs weren't random either. The frequent appearance of certain animals, jaguars, snakes, eagles, and monkeys, suggests these creatures held special meaning in Chorrera cosmology. Many pieces depict shamanic transformations, with human figures taking on animal qualities, revealing their complex spiritual beliefs about the interconnectedness of all living things. What's particularly fascinating is how these ceramic traditions influenced later Andean civilizations. Elements of Chorrera craftsmanship can be traced through subsequent cultures for more than 1,000 years, making them one of the most influential artistic traditions in pre-Columbian South America. When you look at Moche pottery or even early Inca ceramics, you're seeing echoes of techniques pioneered by these brilliant coastal artisans. Today, these surviving pieces give us our clearest window into the Chorrera mind, heart, and soul. Through their ceramics, we can still connect with these ancient artists across the vast expanse of time, proving that true artistic genius never truly fades, even after 3 millennia. While the Chorrera people might be best known for their extraordinary ceramics, their architectural achievements tell an equally impressive story of innovation and ingenuity. These weren't just builders putting one stone atop another. They were visionaries who transformed Ecuador's coastal landscape with structures that defied the expectations of their time. When you picture ancient architecture, your mind might jump to the pyramids of Egypt or the temples of Greece. But along Ecuador's coast, between 1,500 and 500 years before Christ, the Chorrera were developing their own architectural language, one perfectly adapted to their unique environment and social needs. Archaeological excavations have revealed something truly remarkable. Chorrera settlements weren't random collections of dwellings, but carefully planned communities. They constructed their buildings along precise alignments, often oriented to track the movements of the sun or stars. This wasn't just practical. It reflected their deep connection to celestial cycles that governed planting seasons and religious ceremonies. One of the most fascinating aspects of Chorrera architecture was their use of locally available materials transformed through innovative techniques. They developed a special method for hardening mud and clay into durable building materials that could withstand the region's heavy seasonal rains. Some structures show evidence of foundations reinforced with stone and shell fragments to prevent erosion, a brilliant solution for building in areas prone to flooding. Now, here's something that few people realize about the Chorrera. They were master hydraulic engineers who developed some of the earliest complex irrigation systems in the Americas. They constructed networks of canals and reservoirs that captured rainfall and redirected it to agricultural fields, ensuring consistent crop yields even during dry periods. Some of these water management systems were so well designed that modern farmers in the region still use variations of the same techniques today. Their agricultural fields themselves were engineering marvels. The Chorrera created raised cultivation beds in lowland areas that would otherwise be too wet for farming. These elevated fields, connected by an intricate network of drainage channels, allowed them to farm in environments where others would find it impossible. This wasn't just clever. It was revolutionary, enabling them to produce food surpluses that supported their growing population and complex social structure. What's particularly interesting is how the Chorrera organized their communal spaces. At the heart of many settlements were open plazas, gathering places where the community could come together for markets, ceremonies, and social events. These weren't just empty spaces, but carefully designed environments that facilitated the shared experiences that bound their society together. Evidence suggests that important buildings were positioned around these central plazas according to their social function, creating distinct zones for religious, administrative, and everyday activities. This sophisticated approach to urban planning reveals a society with clear social organization and shared values, a community that understood the power of architectural space to shape human interaction. Perhaps most impressively, the Chorrera achieved all this without metal tools, wheeled vehicles, or draft animals. Everything was accomplished through ingenious design, coordinated human effort, and an intimate understanding of their environment. It's a powerful reminder that technological advancement isn't always about having the most advanced tools. Sometimes it's about making the most creative use of what's available. When we look at the archaeological footprint of the Chorrera today, we're not just seeing ancient ruins. We're witnessing the physical expression of a society that thought deeply about how to live in harmony with their environment, while creating spaces that nurtured their cultural values and social connections. Truly, engineering that was far ahead of its time. Let's step back in time and imagine what it would be like to spend a day among the Chorrera people. As the morning sun rises over Ecuador's coast nearly 3,000 years ago, what would you see? Who would you meet? What would surprise you most about their everyday existence? The Chorrera society wasn't a simple community of equals. It was a sophisticated social structure with specialized roles that might remind you of a well-choreographed dance. Archaeological evidence suggests they developed a distinct division of labor that went far beyond basic survival tasks. We can see this in their burial sites, where individuals were laid to rest with tools and artifacts specific to their life's work. At the top of their social hierarchy were likely religious and political leaders, individuals whose authority was tied to their perceived connection with spiritual forces. These weren't distant rulers, but active participants in community life, overseeing important ceremonies and making decisions that affected everyone. Beneath them were the skilled artisans, the masterful potters whose work we still admire today, the architects who designed their buildings, and the craftspeople who created everything from textiles to fishing nets. These specialists were highly valued, their knowledge passed down through generations of apprenticeship. What's particularly fascinating is the evidence suggesting women held significant roles in Chorrera society. Analysis of burial remains indicates that women weren't relegated to domestic tasks alone, but participated in specialized crafts and possibly even leadership positions. This was a society that recognized talent regardless of gender, a surprisingly progressive outlook for their time. The spiritual life of the Chorrera remains one of the most intriguing aspects of their culture. Without written records, we must piece together their religious practices from the artifacts they left behind. What emerges is a rich and complex cosmology centered on the relationship between humans, nature, and the spirit world. One of their most mysterious practices appears to have been shamanic rituals that involved altered states of consciousness. Ceramic vessels have been found that were likely used to brew and consume potent botanical preparations from plants native to the region. These ceremonies weren't mere entertainment, but profound spiritual experiences that reinforced social bonds and their connection to the natural world. The Chorrera people seemed particularly drawn to animal symbolism in their religious expressions. Jaguars, eagles, and serpents appear frequently in their artwork, creatures that likely represented powerful spiritual forces or ancestral connections. Small figurines showing human-animal transformations suggest they believed in the ability to cross between worlds during sacred rituals. When it came to daily sustenance, the Chorrera were incredibly resourceful, developing a diverse diet that took full advantage of their coastal location. Marine resources were abundant in their diet. They harvested shellfish, caught fish with ingeniously designed nets, and hunted sea mammals. Archaeological middens tell us they particularly favored conch and other large mollusks that were not only nutritious, but whose shells could be repurposed as tools and decorative items. But they weren't solely dependent on the sea. The Chorrera cultivated an impressive variety of crops, including maize, beans, and squash, the famous three sisters that formed the nutritional backbone of many pre-Columbian societies. They supplemented these staples with tropical fruits, roots like manioc, and various wild plants. Perhaps most impressive were their food preservation techniques. Living in a tropical climate presents significant challenges for storing food, yet evidence suggests they developed methods for drying fish and meat, fermenting certain foods, and preserving others with natural additives. These innovations not only prevented waste, but allowed them to survive seasonal fluctuations in food availability. Did you know that the Chorrera were able to create ceramics so delicate they looked like true miniature works of art? If you're enjoying this video, like it, share it, and subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel for more incredible stories. Tell us in the comments what surprised you most about this civilization. The daily life of the Chorrera reveals a people who weren't just surviving. They were thriving through innovation, social cooperation, and a deep understanding of their environment. Their story reminds us that human ingenuity isn't a modern invention, but a constant throughout our species' history, appearing wherever people face challenges and find creative ways to overcome them. As we've journeyed through the remarkable world of the Chorrera civilization, one question remains particularly intriguing. What happened to these master craftsmen, innovative engineers, and sophisticated society builders? And perhaps more importantly, what legacy did they leave that continues to echo through history even today? The fingerprints of Chorrera culture can be found across numerous Andean civilizations that followed them. When archaeologists examine the pottery techniques of later cultures like the Bahia, Jamaquaque, and even the early Moche civilizations further south in Peru, they discover unmistakable Chorrera influences. The distinctive thin-walled vessels, the naturalistic animal representations, and even the famous whistling bottles appear in modified forms centuries after the Chorrera themselves had vanished. But their influence wasn't limited to ceramics. The agricultural and irrigation systems pioneered by the Chorrera became the foundation for subsequent farming practices throughout the region. Their water management techniques, so critical in an area with distinct wet and dry seasons, were adopted and expanded by later peoples. In many ways, the Chorrera created the template for sustainable living in coastal Ecuador that would be followed for thousands of years. What's particularly fascinating is how their artistic and spiritual motifs persisted long after their society transformed. The jaguar, serpent, and eagle imagery that appears so frequently in Chorrera art became central symbols in many Andean cultures, eventually finding their way into the iconography of the mighty Inca Empire nearly 2,000 years later. It's as if the Chorrera established a visual and symbolic language that resonated so deeply it became part of the region's cultural DNA. But here's where our story takes a mysterious turn. Around 500 years before Christ, the distinct Chorrera cultural footprint begins to fade from the archaeological record. What happened to them? This remains one of the most tantalizing unsolved mysteries of pre-Columbian America. Unlike some ancient civilizations that show clear signs of violent conquest or sudden catastrophe, the Chorrera appear to have undergone a more gradual transformation. One compelling theory suggests they didn't disappear at all, but rather evolved into several distinct regional cultures. As their population grew and spread across different ecological zones, local adaptations may have led to the emergence of new cultural identities, like the Bahia and Guangala, that we see appearing in the archaeological record. Other scholars point to evidence of climate change during this period. Tree ring data and sediment cores suggest the region experienced significant shifts in rainfall patterns around this time. For a society so dependent on agricultural productivity, such changes could have stressed their social systems to the breaking point, forcing reorganization and adaptation. There's also the possibility that changing trade patterns played a role. The Chorrera were clearly connected to a wider network of cultural exchange. If those connections were disrupted, perhaps by the rise of new powers elsewhere in the Andes, it might have triggered economic and social changes that transformed their society. What makes this mystery so compelling is that we see no evidence of collapse or abandonment. Instead, we witness transformation, the techniques, knowledge, and perhaps even the people themselves continuing under new cultural expressions. It's less a story of ending than one of evolution. The contributions of the Chorrera to Ecuadorian prehistory cannot be overstated. They established many of the fundamental cultural, technological, and artistic patterns that would define Andean civilization for millennia. Their sophisticated ceramics set standards of craftsmanship that later peoples would strive to equal. Their agricultural innovations helped ensure food security in a challenging environment. Their complex social organization demonstrated that sophisticated societies could flourish in tropical coastal settings. Perhaps most importantly, the Chorrera represent a critical chapter in understanding the independent development of complex societies in the Americas. They remind us that brilliant innovations and artistic achievements weren't limited to the old world civilizations of Egypt, Mesopotamia, or China. They emerged wherever human communities had the opportunity to develop stable food sources and social organization. As we continue to study their artifacts and settlements, new technologies are shedding fresh light on old mysteries. Advanced dating methods, isotope analysis, and even ancient DNA studies are giving archaeologists powerful new tools to understand who the Chorrera were and what became of them. Each new discovery adds another piece to a puzzle that continues to fascinate researchers and history enthusiasts alike. The story of the Chorrera isn't just a tale from the distant past. It's an ongoing investigation, with each generation of scholars bringing new questions and techniques to bear on these ancient mysteries. And in that continuing quest for understanding, the legacy of the Chorrera lives on, inspiring us to look more deeply at the remarkable achievements of our shared human past. When we speak of great ancient civilizations, the usual names dominate our conversations: Egypt, Greece, Rome, China, Maya, Inca. Yet history is filled with remarkable societies whose stories have been muffled by time, distance, and the biases of who gets to write history. The Chorrera stand as a powerful reminder that brilliance and innovation have flourished in every corner of our world, often without recognition or remembrance. The ripple effect of Chorrera achievements extended far beyond their own time and place. Like dropping a stone in water, their innovations spread outward, influencing culture after culture across the northern Andes. When archaeologists examine the magnificent ceramics of the later Moche civilization in Peru, they can trace specific techniques back to Chorrera workshops. The iconic stirrup spout vessels that would become hallmarks of Andean pottery, those design elements first appeared in Chorrera hands nearly 3,000 years ago. But their influence wasn't just artistic. The agricultural systems they pioneered, raised fields, irrigation networks, terracing techniques, became fundamental to survival throughout the region. As climate patterns shifted and populations grew, these Chorrera innovations allowed later cultures to adapt and thrive in challenging environments. In a very real sense, they helped write the blueprint for sustainable living in Western South America. Even more fascinating is how their spiritual concepts echoed through generations. The Chorrera understanding of a world where humans, animals, and the supernatural realm intertwined became a cornerstone of Andean cosmology. The shamanic practices they developed evolved into the complex religious systems of later civilizations. Their profound respect for natural forces and celestial cycles shaped religious thought throughout the region for millennia. One of the most remarkable stories of Chorrera impact comes from modern archaeology itself. In the 1940s, when archaeologists first began serious studies of Ecuador's ancient cultures, they were stunned by what they found. The sophistication of Chorrera artifacts forced scholars to completely rethink their assumptions about pre-Columbian development in South America. Here was evidence that complex societies had flourished far earlier than previously believed, a discovery that would eventually transform our understanding of human history in the Americas. The archaeological significance of Chorrera cannot be overstated. Their sites provide a rare window into a critical period of cultural development, that crucial transition when small villages began evolving into more complex societies with specialized roles, artistic traditions, and sophisticated belief systems. By studying the Chorrera, archaeologists gain insights into one of humanity's most important social transformations. Their artifacts serve as time capsules, preserving information about ancient technologies, trade networks, diet, and daily life that would otherwise be lost to history. Each carefully excavated piece adds another thread to the tapestry of understanding how humans adapted to their environments and created meaning in their lives thousands of years ago. Modern scientific techniques have only enhanced the value of these remains. Carbon dating methods allow us to place Chorrera developments in precise chronological context. Residue analysis of pottery reveals details about their diet and ceremonial practices. Even ancient DNA recovered from burial sites is beginning to tell us about the genetic heritage and relationships between ancient Ecuadorian peoples. But perhaps the most profound impact of the Chorrera story lies in what it teaches us about historical perspective. For centuries, the achievements of pre-Columbian peoples were dismissed, downplayed, or simply ignored by European-centered historical accounts. The brilliant innovations of cultures like the Chorrera were overshadowed by narratives that privileged Old World developments. When we rediscover and celebrate the Chorrera today, we're not just learning about Ecuador's past, we're recalibrating our understanding of human achievement. We're acknowledging that genius, creativity, and innovation have always been universal human traits, emerging whenever and wherever conditions allow, regardless of continent or culture. This recognition matters deeply, especially to the descendants of these ancient peoples. For many modern Ecuadorians, particularly indigenous communities, the Chorrera represent ancestral brilliance that was systematically devalued for centuries. Reclaiming this heritage becomes an act of cultural healing and pride. It also enriches all of us, regardless of our backgrounds. The story of human ingenuity is infinitely more fascinating and complex when it includes voices from every corner of the world. Each rediscovered civilization, like the Chorrera, adds new dimensions to our understanding of what humans have achieved and what we might yet accomplish. As we conclude our journey through the world of the Chorrera, perhaps that's their most enduring legacy. They remind us to look beyond the familiar narratives, to seek out the forgotten stories, and to recognize that human brilliance has always been a global phenomenon. In their ceramics, architecture, and community organization, the Chorrera weren't just building a society. They were creating a testament to human potential that would echo through the ages, waiting to be rediscovered and celebrated by future generations. As we reach the end of our journey through the fascinating world of the Chorrera civilization, one thing becomes crystal clear. History is an endless treasure trove of remarkable stories waiting to be discovered. Each piece of pottery, every architectural fragment, tells a tale of human resilience, creativity, and brilliance that transcends time. The Chorrera weren't just another ancient society. They were innovators, artists, and dreamers who pushed the boundaries of what was possible in their time. They remind us that greatness doesn't always make it into history's spotlight, but that doesn't make it any less extraordinary. Think about it. 3,000 years ago, on the same coast where tourists now snap photos and surf waves, master artisans were creating pottery so fine it would challenge modern craftsmen. In the same valleys where farmers now tend their crops, the Chorrera were developing agricultural techniques so effective that some are still used today. Their story teaches us something profound about human potential. Without computers, without metal tools, without any of our modern conveniences, they created works of such beauty and sophistication that they continue to amaze us millennia later. It's a powerful reminder that human ingenuity knows no boundaries of time or place. The Chorrera civilization stands as testament to the countless untold stories that lie beneath the surface of our commonly taught history. For every well-known ancient empire, there are dozens of remarkable cultures whose achievements deserve to be celebrated and remembered. So the next time someone tells you that all the great innovations came from the well-known civilizations of the old world, remember the Chorrera. Remember their whistling bottles, their paper-thin ceramics, their elaborate buildings, and their sophisticated society. Remember that excellence, creativity, and innovation can flourish anywhere human beings gather and dream. And speaking of remembering, if you've enjoyed this deep dive into one of South America's most fascinating ancient cultures, don't forget to like this video and share it with friends who love discovering hidden historical gems like this one. Subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel for more amazing content about prehistoric civilizations and the countless mysteries they left behind. Join us next time as we continue to uncover more incredible stories from humanity's past. The adventure of discovery never ends. There are always more mysteries to solve, more stories to tell, and more wonders to explore. Until our next historical journey together, keep wondering, keep questioning, and keep exploring the amazing legacy of our shared human story.